Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Black Man Speak. I'm your co-host, VJR Stewart.
I'm your co-host, D. Tommy D. Duncan III, otherwise known as TD3. It is Wednesday, June the 28th, the last Wednesday of the month of June. Jimmy, if it's Wednesday night,
It's certainly Black Man Speak, and so let's give a big shout out to Liquid for providing our theme music, and also this show is being brought to you from For Us Films in our own studio. So I want to give a shout out to them. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button so you'll be notified when we upload every new shows every Wednesday. And if you're here watching the show, invite a friend so you guys have something interesting to talk about. With that being said, Tom, I know we got a full full lineup as usual. So let's jump right into our news segment and then let's get to our guest.
all right. Well, folks, we have an exciting show for you tonight. We have two special guests, and it looks like we may have actually pulled the cat out of the bag. We have our good real estate
Yes.
expert, brothers Dwight and brother Tirrell, who are going to be coming on tonight to talk about what's going on in the real estate market and why, for some of you folks with higher credit scores, you may want to listen in on this one a little bit closely. It's kind of interesting. But before we do that, we have a couple of news briefs that we'd like to share with you. Just kind of some updates, one update, one new information, maybe not new information, but something interesting in the news that we'll talk about before we get into the meat and potatoes of our show, Jimmy. So, first, Jimmy, you kind of had a couple of things that you wanted to talk about with the Kodak Black case, which I wasn't too familiar with, Jimmy, until you brought it up and did a little research on
Well, Tom, it wasn't so much about him as it is. I'm sorry, I used the wrong verb tense. As it is about the multi-tiered justice system. Now, black people are very familiar with the fact that our justice system is not totally fair to everyone. It seems like those with money tend to get more leniency and more justice than the rest of us who don't have money. And then certainly, if it comes down on color
it. You
lines,
can forget
white
about
folks tend to white folks tend to get more justice than black folks. So, but this is one of those stories, Tom, where I just wanted to point out that the president's son has been in the news, and he lied on basically lied on a gun application, which is a federal offense, and he gets nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. Barely a tap on the wrist. He gets his case diverted, and basically his record to be expunged in a couple of years. It's not even probation. They call it diversion. And this rapper did the same thing, lied on his gun application. He's getting 3 years. And so there have been plenty of people who plenty of people of color who get multi-year sentences for doing this. And white people and connected people get taps on the wrist.
well, let's not even talk about people of color, black folks. We tend to get the lower end of the justice in the yet to be United States, Jimmy. And I had never heard of Kodak Black prior to you bringing this up. Obviously, because I don't pay a ton of attention to, especially a lot of the newbies within the rap genre. I just
Right, same
have
here.
a very difficult time with the content and the impact that it has on our young people, but that's another story for another time. But I was looking at some of his background. It looks like he got a little time in 2019, I think, for a couple of years, and then this is some recent stuff. Looks like he failed to show up for a drug screening that was a part of his. I'm not exactly sure if you would call it probation, but he was supposed to show up for a drug screening, and he ended up getting put in jail again. And this guy,
Got revoked.
yeah, he's been going back and forth, man, not just between lying on a federal document, but also a little background on some what they call drug trafficking.
Mm. Well, well, Tom, it certainly seems we have a lot more work to do in this country. We're not there yet, and we know that. We made a lot of progress over the years since slavery, through the civil rights movement, and yeah, the country has made great strides, but there's still a lot of work to do. So we can't give up the fight.
Well, Jimmy, truer words have not been said, but until we have a a much broader and more powerful seat at the table who make the laws and enforce the laws, Jimmy, I don't know that this is going to change very much because those folks who make the laws and enforce the laws look a little bit different than the folks who are victims.
Well, and plus it also bears our time. You have to be available for jury duty, and we certainly need to get more of our people in those judgeships.
We do. And interestingly enough, I just got a jury summons a couple of days ago that I'm
Did
signing
you?
up for. I did it
Okay.
online. It looks like they've been on the come up in terms of technology. So I went ahead and did that online so they can have all of my information, and we'll see what happens.
I'm glad to hear you're not trying to duck out of jury
Yeah.
duty,
And,
Tom.
and we'll see. I guess I think they pay you what, $7 or $8 a day or something.
Oh yeah, you get the grand max $7 $8 a day. So plus a parking pass. I think they give you something for parking.
Yeah,
So
but I
um,
would say this though. What did concern me about this particular case, beyond obviously the optics of the politics, I think at least those on our side of the track, I know there's always been a two-tier system in America when it comes
three or
to
four tier.
exactly. Uh, when I was looking at a few more things on this young man, and obviously he's pretty wealthy. Well, not wealthy compared to Warren Buffett, but wealthy compared to the average Joe. He's got a lot of
Mhm.
money in the bank to be able to afford the bonds that he does. Number one, and then number two, uh, when you look at his following, that speaks a lot for itself. But this dude, this young man, he needs to get some help. I was looking at a couple of videos that were very troubling to me. I could barely understand what he was trying to say. He was barely literate. And I know that that goes maybe with the run of the mill in terms of today's rap. Back in the 80s and 90s, you could understand what they were saying. Now you don't. But this guy seemed to maybe have some mental health issues that need to be addressed.
Well, Tom, there's quite a few of our young people, young guys, that are in that situation. So, we've been talking about Ja for a while,
Yeah,
um, and it suffers through the same thing. They're young, they have a lot of money, they just don't know how to control themselves. And so, I hope everyone that's in this situation find the help that they need, because certainly they can use their voice to be a positive influence for other young men coming up, and not a negative influence to misguide people.
this is true. However, you know that mass media and the music business will green light certain types of things when it comes to music and film. And then, things that are constructive towards our community don't seem to get the type of love. But we have to be a part of the process of rejecting things that are not healthy for our community and for
Tom, a lot of the stories that we cover here on Black Men Speak do not make the national news, and they should.
right.
And that's done on purpose. If we can find these stories and talk about them, certainly CBS, NBC, and ABC, and then the cable news outlets can do the same.
You're correct, Jimmy. Let's go ahead and go to our next piece of news. And this is really more of an update to a story we did a few weeks ago in Florida. A woman, a mother, a sister, was shot by a neighbor of hers through her door. It was this is something going back and forth with her for a little while. The neighbor, obviously, Caucasian woman, wasn't pleased with her children who sometimes ran through the yard or whatever it was, and went back and forth. And from my understanding, from the last time we had reported on this, I think the lady had hit one of the kids in the head with a computer. The mother went on behalf of her children to talk with this lady, and unfortunately, she shot her through the door and killed her. Miss Ajike Owens, I believe, was her name, and Susan
Right.
Lorincz was the perpetrator here. It took a few days for the law enforcement to take her in to arrest her, and it looks like now there were people who were expecting murder charges, and it comes right down to it. It looks like the charges are now going to be manslaughter, maybe second degree, and a lot of folks are up in arms about it because of the circumstances.
Yeah, Tom, we have to be careful. So we've talked about this before on this show. Um, I mean, there's killing a person, there's murder, there's homicide, there's self-defense, um, and even those homicide and murder have degrees,
Correct.
and all of those have elements. I mean, these are legal constructs. So just because someone dies at your hand, that's not necessarily murder. Murder is a legal construct, and being an illegal construct, there are elements of it that you have to prove in court in order to validate or make it true. And so if you can't prove all those elements, and one of one of the biggest one with murder is intent. So if you really intended to kill someone, and even that intent, there are mitigating circumstances because if you walk in on your spouse, for example, and your spouse is having an affair and you catch them, well, excuse me, in a bit of rage, you can go after the lover of your spouse and you can kill that person. And you were fully within your mental capacity to want to kill this person because you're in such rage. But you can also argue that, that, yeah, I intended to kill this person. I knew right and wrong, but the circumstances dictated, drove me into a rage. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have killed this person. And so that can be considered and taken into consideration. And that could be filed as murder two or murder three, not necessarily murder one. But if you can't prove intent or all the elements of murder, then you have to bump it down to just homicide. And even there, you have involuntary homicide, you have malicious, you have willful intent, and then there's another one, negligent. So I mean, there are degrees of homicide. So it all just comes down to what elements you think you can prove. And if this person hadn't said, "Hey, I'm going to kill you," or represented some way to intend to kill this person, she may argue in court that this is an accident. Maybe I
Well,
just meant to scare the
it
person.
would be kind of if she was
The
shooting,
gun went off by
if
accident.
she was shooting someone or shooting at something into the sky inside of her home to scare the person, that's one thing. But if you know that this mother of a 9-year-old child is at your front door and you shoot through the front door, that is not to scare them. That is an intent at harm. And to your point, when you look at
Well, Tom, I mean, that's hard to prove that was intent. It could be an
but
accident.
what was the intent if you shot through the door and she was knocking on your door? Where
What if she argues that the gun just went off accidentally?
the,
She didn't intend to kill the person. She wasn't even trying to warn the person or harm the person. Um, she got the gun for self defense, and the gun just went
oh,
off.
the gun just happened to go off right through the door, right when she was knocking at your front door.
So it's going to be hard in that case, Tom, for the prosecutor, and then I guess this is where their logic and their thinking that they can't prove all the elements of murder, so they
They
bumped it
can't prove
down.
that she did not have an intent or ill will against somebody. Because at the end of the day, if she had a problem,
Well, the ill will is not one of the
if,
elements,
if she
Tom.
if she had an issue and she was at the front door, she could have easily said, to your point, Jimmy, call law enforcement. I have someone who's at my front door. They're unwelcome. You can call the police. No, she took a gun and she shot through the front door.
And that's all we know is that she had a gun and she shot through the door, which that definitely proved negligence on her part.
Not just
Because no,
negligence, it proved intent.
it doesn't prove
I don't know
intent,
too
Tom.
many people who shoot through the front of their own door for no reason.
Once again, Tom, the issue here that the prosecutor is going to have a hard time proving intent if she goes into court and argues that it was an accident.
Oh,
The gun
she
accidentally,
accidentally shot through her
the
own
gun
front door.
just, I was nervous, my finger twitched, and the gun accidentally went off.
Okay,
And and so there's no way that the prosecutor is going to prove that that didn't happen. So it's plausible, and that's the only plausible explanation at that time, unless the prosecutor has something else to counter that, then that's all. That's what's going to be presented in court. That's going to be the only evidence they're going to consider. And so, if you go into court and argue murder one and murder two, and you can't prove intent, well, guess what? The case is going to get thrown out at the end. So it's best to downgrade the charges to some elements that you can prove in order to get a conviction.
very interesting how the law works for our black women.
That is true, Tom. But sometimes it just works out that way.
Well, that's
So.
the way it is, and that's when we talk about a two-tier system, and that's the thing, Jimmy. As black men in particular, if we're not speaking on behalf of our women, if we're not defending and protecting our women, then what are we worth? So, Jimmy, we have to make sure that regardless of how the law works for us, understanding we're in the country that was not built by our ancestors or for our ancestors, we have to continue to push and fight to get what we deserve in a court of law, which is fairness. And I think that's all that anybody's asking for.
Well, and then the other thing, Tom, if she went over there to confront this person for assaulting her child, maybe she should have called law enforcement and filed a complaint against this person rather than going over there to confront this lady who's maybe deranged, maybe has some mental issues, who knows. Um, but on the surface, for the things that they know they can prove in court, I'm guessing the prosecutor figured out that or determined that they couldn't prove murder, so they went with a lesser charge of manslaughter. So,
Well, all that
um,
being said, is we have a mother, we have a daughter who's now gone unnecessarily for something that I think if the roles and the switches were turned in this case, Jimmy, I think that it would probably be a different situation. But again, as we spoke before, there is definitely a two-tier system when it comes.
well, that is true, Tom. And a lot of times we get overcharged and we don't have good representation to defend us, and so those overcharges stick only because a lot of times we can't afford legal representation or a good lawyer to defend our rights. So yeah, the justice system, and we tend to make a deal and may take a plea to avoid higher jail times, and a lot of times. Those plea deals, Tom, or charges that if you were to go to court with a good lawyer, you could probably beat, but we end up pleading guilty to them more often than not. So and that's sad. So yeah, the justice system is not fair for us, and so I do admit that we have a lot of work to do before we get to a point where it is fair.
Absolutely, Jimmy. Well, let's go ahead and now transition to the stars of our show for this evening. We would like to, before we get started, welcome Armando Brown to the show, who's on the chat line. The commish, Brother Ed Gray, who is our audience.
Yes,
Thank you for joining us this evening.
good radio show on Saturdays, Tom. I didn't catch it this Saturday, so I apologize for that. I got tied up, but I normally catch his show, and it's a very good show.
Good deal. And I also want to welcome my good friend, Brother Asar Al-Kabelan out of the Austin area. Of course, we want to make sure that we have folks to tune in to the commish radio show, and
Yes.
also to the New African Genius podcast episode that is available. So make sure you check those out.
Have you shared a link or with how to catch that show at a time? 'Cause I've been curious. I've been wanting to catch it and watch it. So I don't think I have a link to the
Okay. We'll see if
podcast.
we can get that link and move forward from there. In
Okay.
the meantime, we would now like to welcome.
Oh, one other thing, Tom, before we welcome our guest,
Yes.
I'm going to check out in the background and just and produce the rest of the show because I'm not feeling well.
Okay.
But you and the guest, and I'll be listening. And if you need anything from me, just hit me on the private chat line.
Sounds good. All right.
Okay.
Now we will go ahead and move forward. Gentlemen, we want to thank you very much for joining us evening. Brother Dwight Johnson, Mr. Tirrell Richard, welcome back to Black Men Speak. We appreciate you both.
Thanks for having us.
Good deal, good deal. So, I mean, it seemed like it was just a couple of weeks ago, but we had you here towards the end of March talking about what was going on after the first couple of months of the year as it pertains to real estate. Of course, the time always moves extremely fast, and so we wanted to get you guys back as soon as possible to talk about what you are seeing in the market. It is summer. Of course, it is piping hot here in Texas, but, we had a good exchange here recently, and I saw some things that were pretty interesting that you were talking about, especially for folks who have pretty decent credit ratings, but maybe looking kind of sideways. But let's kind of talk about what's going on in the market in general since we last talked up through this year. Of course, the Fed just had their meeting a few months ago. It looks like rates are standing pat right now with interest rates that would affect home buyers. But let's talk about what you guys are seeing right now and move forward from there. What I'll do is very briefly ask you to introduce yourselves. Of course, Dwight, you're out there representing folks who are trying to make moves in the market, and our good friend, Mr. Richard, of course, is finding the money for them.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, audience, it's my pleasure to be back. Always love when I get that text. It does seem like the time just flew by, like we were just on here recently, but this is a respected show around the region. And I'm always happy to come in and offer my insight, what's going on. I do come from the Houston, Texas area, represent the D1 Realty team, and I'm brokered by Keller Williams, Houston preferred. Grateful to be here this evening.
And Mr. Richard.
Again, thanks for having us here. It's always great to be back. And you're right, time does fly, and we We love always getting the invite. So thanks for having us. I am with Efinity Mortgage. I am a branch manager there, where I've been in the mortgage business for about 25 years and just loving the way it keeps going. It changes all the time.
Yes, sir. So tell us about what you guys have been seeing more recently in the market since we last talked. It's been a couple of months. Things obviously have cooled down a little bit with the interest rate hikes that we had last year. But I know that when we talked the last time, Brother Johnson, you were mentioning that it's still a pretty hot market, still somewhat of a seller's market right now, correct?
Absolutely. That is correct. It has not transitioned. I think public perception might have a lot of people think that the market's changed and that it's a buyer's market, but the low inventory still has it being scales being tipped in favor of the sellers right now still.
Good deal. And help us understand what impacts. I mean, it's been low inventory across the country, most places, for quite a while now. Any reprieve, insight, anything that you see that may make a dent in that might help buyers out anytime within the next year or so?
Well, one of the things in this region, it's not really a helpful, but Houston and Texas are still some of the most affordable places in the country. So I don't know if that falls into the category of a reprieve, but for Brother Tirrell and I, these are still Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, as you compare to anywhere else in the country, affordable as compared to those places.
Right.
I believe we're seeing a few more new construction and new bills, new permits being issued. So that always helps when there are more inventory, because if there's not a whole lot of new construction, they have the ability to raise those prices. And if there's nothing else, the resale market's going to go right there with it. If there's not enough houses, it's really hard to control the prices. So as new homes start coming out of the ground, that's a possible thing. We don't have as many supply chain issues and things as we've had in the past. There's still
COVID.
As inventory and building materials come back online and they can build homes more faster. If we can get more out of the ground, that's a potential positive for the industry.
Well, the other thing is this. I know the Fed said that they may raise interest rates one or a couple more times before the end of the year. I don't know that particularly helps us any in terms of giving incentives to home builders to build more product, correct? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Brother Tirrell?
Well, I would say this, that when they raise the rates, it's for a reason, and they're looking historically at what happened in the past. They're actually looking at the employment rate, and they're trying to control different things, whether it's heartless or smart to do. But I do believe that raising the rates, they're gonna. It's not like it's gonna take it from where it is now around high 6s, 7s. Not gonna take it to the 8s, I don't believe. But it's just to discourage people from buying houses. To tell the truth, they're doing it for a reason.
And when you say discourage people from buying houses, why would they do that? Isn't home ownership really the foundation of the American principle of life, liberty, and the pursuit of?
They're trying to slow down our buying. They want to control if it's going to be a recession or they just want to control our buying. They want us to slow down spending money.
Gotcha. I certainly understand. So what have you been seeing on your side of the equation in terms of what's going on in the market? What's been hot? What's been slowing down? What's been happening on your side?
Well, Dwight and I, we're in the same game, but we play different fields at times. Right. So it is still hot for Dwight. In my business is not as hot because we don't just do new homes. We don't just do new purchases. So last year was actually the second worst real estate year in terms of mortgage lending, not on the the buyers and sellers side, but mortgage lending, which also encompasses refinances. Mm-hmm. So you have, when the rates go up, you have less refinances. So last year was the second worst year in history. 2008 was the worst year. They're forecasting into this year that this is going to be the worst year in history. And 2008 will become the second worst. And it's because we're still doing our purchases. But, if you have, if you've been living in the last 3, 4, 7 years, you got a low interest rate. So it behooves you not to refinance your house. So we're losing that refinance business. So,
Gotcha.
but there are silver linings. I haven't seen a downturn in my business. Just stay professional. And the reason that is, and Dwight can attest to this, when times are hard like this, we have a lot of people that jump in our business that get out of our business real quick. So we have a bigger piece of pie that we're getting right now, as opposed to when the rates are very low, when everybody wants to be a realtor or mortgage lender.
Gotcha. Now that is pretty interesting. Coming out of COVID, you would think that probably would have been the worst of the worst next to, of course, the debacle in 2008, 2009. And what you're saying is we're coming off the second worst year, and this could probably be the worst year, period.
Correct. But you have to remember, in COVID, rates still were low. So
Gotcha.
interest rates were still low. So you were still operating with refinances. And, and COVID actually gave a lot of opportunity. Not saying that I like that. Was, you got to remember, when people are at homes or not getting as many hours, now they want to refinance and get cash out so they can continue their life, or continue their lifestyle, I should say. So a lot of people that would not have refinanced then did refinance when COVID was here, because either their wife wasn't working or the husband wasn't working, and they were trying to get some cash out to maintain a lifestyle.
Gotcha. So with that being the case, we want to welcome our good brother Frederick Roberts for joining us on the show. We, of course, want to welcome all of our friends and guests out there who have questions when it comes to real estate. This is definitely the time to call in to our call-in number, which I will show here below if I can find it. And also our chat line. Feel free to use our chat line to ask any questions that you might have on real estate. Something interesting came up here recently that kind of had me scratching my head. And it pertained to folks who have pretty good credit ratings. And there was something that you said, Dwight, that kind of shocked me. But maybe you can kind of unpack and explain why having a high credit rating is an advantage, but maybe not as much of an advantage as it was a few years ago.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go ahead and scratch the surface on that from a 30,000 feet level, and maybe Tirrell can bring it a little bit home. But yeah, there's a loan level adjustment pricing, something that came out a while back, where basically, in layman's terms, where the high credit score was less weight was being put on that. So I've gotten a little bit of an understanding on it, where you weren't necessarily getting worse, but they're more or less maybe trying to balance the playing field, or potentially, like Brother Tirrell said, just slow things down a little bit. So you're not necessarily getting a worse interest rate like I thought or understood, but it's weighted and it's a sliding scale difference. So your high credit is not worth as much cachet as it was before. So, but again, I'm not on the lending side. I just send them to Brother Tirrell, and when he tells me they're ready to go, I go find him a house and negotiate a deal for him. But maybe he can dig a bit deeper.
Yeah, I can expound on that.
So does that mean that folks with higher credit scores aren't getting as good of a deal, or is it people with lower credit scores are getting better deals? What does that mean?
Let me kind of explain that. It's called LLPAs, loan level price adjustments. Mm-hmm. So in my field, we get we get clients all the time that call you and say, "What's my interest rate?" And it's not that simple. It's so many things go into interest rate. It's not just your credit score. It's your loan to value. It's your debt to income rate. It's so many different things. So what they're doing is, like he was saying, they're trying to even the playing field. So what they're doing is they're saying, in the past, we gave too much of a break for people with higher credit scores. So we gave them better loan level price adjustments. So we're taking some of that away, because we actually hurt the people with the lower scores. We actually we didn't give them the price adjustment, so they were having a higher rate. And now we're going to try to even the playing field to promote a couple of things. It's to promote even the playing field, but it's also to make sure that, well, in layman's term, they want to make sure that the people with the lower credit scores default less. So if they give you a higher interest rate, you have more of a reason to default. So they're trying to keep you from defaulting by giving you a lower payment based on having the loan level price adjustment.
The cost
So
of your loan,
it's
the
a
cost
good
of your loan,
thing.
basically. This basically comes down to the cost of your loan, right?
Yeah. Well, at the end of the day, here's the deal. They wanted to give this, but they weren't going to take it from themselves. So they took it from the people with better credit. So now with better credit, you are going to get a little bit higher rate than you would have got. It may be an eighth, but an eighth is still an eighth. That may be $40 a month, and it adds up. But the people who have the money that lend it, they were not going to take it from themselves. So they took it from the people with the higher credit ratings, and they gave the people with the lower credit ratings between the 620s and 640s, maybe up to 660. So it just something you have to live with, unfortunately.
So would that not possibly have unintended consequences? Otherwise, people have less incentive to do the things that they were doing to get higher credit ratings if they're going to get just as good a benefit.
Well, I'll say this.
I mean, hey, I'm thinking about our audience now.
I have clients that, they hate it. And they're like, I'm paying this. Well, Dwight can attest to this. When home values went crazy, and we had clients that would bid on a $500,000 house, they'd bid $600,000 because they wanted to win that house. So that would have a much bigger effect than you gaining an eighth of a point. So the point I'm trying to make is, regardless what they do, if people are going to want homes, people are going to want to, if they're increase their income, they're going to want a bigger house. They're gonna complain about it, but unfortunately, they're still gonna do it. It's just the facts.
Yeah. And the one thing I had to get clarity around, you're not getting a worse interest rate than the lower person. It's just not as good as it was. So
you will still get a much better rate than me.
I had the exact same thought. Well, let me skip a few bills and then.
Well, no, don't do that.
So you don't want to do that. So you're not getting a worse rate. It's just not as good as it was.
Yeah, you may have been at 6.5. Now you're at 6.625. They were going to be at 7.25. Now they're at 7.125. So
Gotcha.
They get a little less, you get a little more, but the majority of people stay where they were.
I got you. Makes sense. I'd like to welcome our good friend who's been on the show before, John William, our expert CPA. We want to thank him for joining us. Let's talk about what this does in the overall market, and then, of course, how this impacts our communities. We know that Black communities, in particular, are less likely to own homes overall than other folks in other communities. Don't know how long this is going to last. Don't know how many years it might be until interest rates come down. But when we look at home ownership and/or ownership of real tangible assets, whether that's a home, whether that's land, whether that's investment properties, that is the primary driver of growth, wealth, that is within our communities. And I know that you know a lot of these people who have been leveraging this. Now that we're looking at maybe a couple of years where interest rates are going to be a little bit higher, obviously, to your point, Brother Johnson, inventory isn't that high. It's just going to be a lot more expensive, and you're paying higher prices in markets that have traditionally been lower cost, like the Texas, maybe like Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, etc. What are you seeing out there that folks are doing? What are you seeing people who are still wanting to be homeowners? Now this market has gotten extremely tight. Interest rates are higher. And now, with inventory being so low, how are you working with these folks to continue to help them to pursue their dreams? What's out there for them? What do you say to these folks? And especially for young people, I mean, every year you're going to have a new generation of young people who are coming out of college, getting started, working their jobs, and they want a piece of this pie as well.
Probably one of the things that I say always is education and knowledge is the key, and that applies whether it's real estate or any other industry. But you need to partner yourself with true professionals, the tried and true. Brother Tirrell kind of mentioned that even in spite of maybe the mortgage industry being down, a lot of professionals, businesses we're maintaining market share, or the top professionals are actually taking market share. So some of us, our businesses are growing. So the key is to partner yourself, follow programs such as yours, get in relationship with true industry professionals, mortgage people, real estate professionals. So when you make a goal, you need to come from the law of attraction and speaking things existence. So when you make a decision that that's what you want to do, and you partner yourself with true professionals, we can usually help structure a plan or put something in place to help you do it. So I think education is the key. That's one thing. So if somebody tells me that they're committed and they want to do a house, we can look at what they're doing now in rent. We can look at what they make. We can look at their ability, what they can save. And we can usually draft or create a legitimate game plan to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. But a lot of it starts with a decision, with a positive decision and a positive mindset and believing you can do it. Because we see people all the time. I remember a couple shows back, we talked about the young couple that, only made $40,000, but they wanted a house. So it starts with making a decision to want something better and to want something different. And then it does absolutely matter who you're in business with, because there's 41,000 realtors, or at least there were. Now they're falling like flies right now, because you got to actually do work these days. You got to know what you're doing. You got to know how to read a contract, etc. But don't necessarily. This is too big of a decision in your life to partner with your aunt's nephew who sold 2 houses a year, or somebody that has a mortgage license, that happens to have a mortgage license, but they got 3 other jobs as well, and they're not true professionals.
What about your thoughts on that, Tirrell?
Well, first of all, I do want to address the myth that the interest rates are high. And I show my clients this all the time. Interest rates are not high right now. Historically, interest rates were higher than they are right now. In the 90s, interest rates were in the, plus 9% plus. And that's just the 90s. In the 80s, during the savings and loan crisis, they were 13, 14%. We're just a little spoiled because we came out the lowest historical interest rates of all time. That's the only difference. So my thoughts, and here's what I share with my clients. You have to have a plan. So when you come to me, I'm going to show you what a house costs. But I want you to sit down with your family and make a decision on how much you're going to pay for a home. So this just may not be the time that you're going to be able to get that $400,000 house if you don't want that payment that goes along with it. You may just have to, when you get with Brother Dwight, say, hey, I need to stick to this budget. I can afford this price. But this will always be my saying. If you're renting, that's 100% interest, because nothing's going to work helping you out. You're helping somebody else out. You're not building anything for yourself. So it is better than renting. It always will be better than renting. But Brother Dwight said it so well. If you get with the wrong people, you can cost yourself a lot of money. If you have the wrong realtor, you may end up paying more for a house than if you got with the right realtor, because they have all the stats. They have MLS. They know what houses they're selling for. They have negotiation skills. It's not just by having the stats, it's about negotiation skills. And we have data that I can look up and see what Dwight does, on a yearly basis. And they can, people can see what I do on a yearly basis. So if I'm a realtor and I have, clients that are close, and I'm trying to figure out who to give the house to, and I see that Dwight does, 60 million a year, and then I pull somebody else that does 1 house a year, I'm going to choose Dwight's client. So it is very important that you make sure that you get with the right professionals, because they not only protect you, but they have a higher likelihood of getting you to your end goal.
Another question for you, and I don't want to underappreciate this trend that's been going on for at least the last decade when it comes to our remote workers. What do you see, and what impact do you see that the remote gig economy is having on the real estate market, if any? Between a lot of folks who are, in the Airbnb space and use that, as their leverage as opposed to home buying. Our economy is shifting in some ways. What impact is the remote working economy having on real estate that you guys are seeing? Dwight?
I guess I see for my clients that are already homeowners and that have equity, I'm always trying to figure out what to do with that equity. So I do have several clients. I was actually with someone that knew you from Texas A&M this weekend, showing a property to a investor out of DC. So she's buying Airbnbs right here in the Houston market and making money doing it. So, hate to beat a dead horse, but it's like, have a plan that you put a little thought in it and let us help refine or fine tune that plan. And then we can do that. So there are a lot of Airbnb folks that are still making profits here. The traveling nursing industry, because of the med center and things we have here. So there are a lot of folks that are, generating revenue on that. But from my personal perspective, I think it's more the investors that are tapping into that space. And I don't know that it's hurting, so to speak. We do know there are a lot of institutional buyers buying single families and rentals. So that impacts the inventory kind of at the lowest levels, where a lot of your first-time home buyers would be. You have a lot of your institutional investors just grabbing those properties up sight unseen. If I put a property on the market right now for under $250, within 3 days, I'll have 2 or 3 offers from somebody that has not even seen that house. They just start writing offers.
And is that not putting the squeeze, especially on first-time home buyers? Because I remember looking at some statistics. I want to say it may have been somewhere between 30 to 40% of a lot of these single-family homes are owned by institutional buyers.
Yes, it's absolutely putting a squeeze on. That's the toughest market to serve, because typically those might be the ones with the lower credit score. They may have the less money saved for down payment and closing costs, and they're competing for the homes at the lowest price point that are being scooped up. And unfortunately with fair housing and things like that, a lot of people might discriminate against an FHA buyer or a VA buyer in that price point and may go with a cash buyer. So, but again, if you get with the right professional, and that seems to be our theme every single time we're on this show, we know people that are, bringing us deals before they hit the market. Like you gotta be connected to be able to compete in that space. If you're not connected and you're working with someone that doesn't do it on a high level, your odds are very, very weak to compete in that space.
What are you seeing, Tirrell?
Well, I wanted to, add on that, especially with the first-time home buyers. I work with a lot of first-time home buyers. I have, a array of clients I work with. But as we always say, get with the right professional. I know I am the right professional, because I do bring value in those areas. So what I do, first of all, when you say they have less money, well, there's more money out there for them as well. So I have a lot of first-time home buyers that are putting no money down on a house. We're having the government fund it for them. So the money down is not the problem. But he is correct. There are realtors that are going to discriminate against them. So you have to have the right strategy. My strategy is this, and Dwight will tell you if this will work or not, and it has been working for me, is I get my clients to apply before they look for the house when they are a little bit credit challenged. And I get my underwriters to completely approve my client. So when they put the offer in, my call is to the listing agent. And I say, hey, this client is as good as you get to next to cash. He's already been approved. We just need the house to appraise. So if they're having a competitive offer, they're going to be chosen over somebody else that the realtor doesn't know if they've been through underwriting and if they've already been, diagnosed that they can get this house.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, before they've even identified a home, already have their letter in place saying, I can afford this much, and then go look.
No, there's 2 letters.
Okay.
I can give you a letter that says you afford it based on my experience.
Okay.
But all realtors understand that I'm not the underwriter. The buck stops with the underwriter.
Okay.
I'm giving the letter to say that not only have I said it was good, we collected all their documents. We had my underwriter approve them for an amount. Now my underwriter said they can afford a house of $329,002, not a dollar more. So it's already been through underwriting, and you don't have to worry about as many snags.
Okay, good deal. No, that's great feedback.
Go ahead. I'll piggyback that too. And so to work with my team at this stage of my business, we have just some system and process It doesn't matter if you're a first time or not. You have to do that because I know what the market is. It's already short. So I'm number one, if you're looking at houses that you may or may not be able to afford, you make my job a lot more difficult. You know, if you're looking at a 350 house and it comes back as 329, 325, that's a different house in a different community or on this side of the bridge versus that side of the beltway or whatever. And when you've looked at homes that you can't afford, everyone $25,000 down is going to pale in comparison to that one. So number one, you set me and yourself up for failure by looking early. Number two, if it's a good house at $329, $1,002, and you don't have that and you're not ready, you can't compete. So my partner on this end and I, we're so in sync that we get the letter, it's exact amount. We were able to make that offer. My version of Brother Tirrell here is going to call within 30 minutes or so of making an offer and going to let them know how well they're qualified. So we work in tandem to make these things work. And the poor realtor on the other side is thinking, oh, that was awesome. Your lender actually called me. Well, they don't know that was a strategy that we have in place to make these offers work. And, we write thorough contracts. We highlight the contract so that the seller and the seller's agent and the seller knows. So sometimes you may be writing an offer to a realtor and they don't understand how well your offer is. So we put it in layman's terms and we copy the seller so they know exactly how great our offer is. And then it's backed up by the lender. And people love to be in business with folks that know how to communicate and that exude confidence about their clients. And so that's how we get it done. Also on that first time thing, we don't necessarily promote that line of business, but we do a ton of it. And we do have programs because the interest rates are so high. We are seeing the days on market. So the inventory is low, but the days on market are a little longer. They're not selling as fast. So we've had situations where we're able to get the seller in some cases to pay some of those costs as well. So that's something that an inexperienced realtor wouldn't know how to do or certainly wouldn't think to do. So we're getting seller contribution at some time. So again, you make up your mind, come with a legitimate plan, be committed to your plan, and then we will refine and shore up that plan, and we'll get you to the finish line if you're committed. Like we do it all day, every day, and my business is up this year, believe it or not, and I'm not even focusing so much in the business in quarter two, but we're on pace to be 10, 15 units above goal this year in this tough market. We are gaining market share. The goal in January was to maintain through what we knew was going to be a challenging year. And we knew when we came out on the other side, whenever the market levels off, that we would be fine. But we've had the good fortune to actually capture market share in this down market. So we're doing extremely well.
Well, congratulations on that. No less, of course, was expected, my good friend. So we want to welcome Celia Reese tonight, Ms. Marion Square, Kevin Johnson. What's going on, my friend? Out of the D.C. area. And also we have a question. Oh, Ms. Ajike Booker, thank you for joining us tonight. I had a question from KJ. Define affordability with respect to a family's budget. Can you give a little bit more clarification on that? And that's for either one of you.
Yeah, I can take that one. So it's kind of a tough answer or a tough question, I should say, because affordability, you're going to know it more than I'm going to know it. Because I can tell you what you can afford in terms of getting approved, but we have to have a talk about what are your hobbies, because we don't look at your hobbies. We don't know if you like to travel 2 times a year. We don't know if you and your wife go out to eat 4 days a week. So it's a conversation I do have with clients when they're looking to purchase a house. I always tell them, don't be house rich and pocket poor. You want to make sure you can still maintain your lifestyle. You want to make sure that your credit card bills every month are going down. You don't want to be adding, credit debt. You want to be subtracting credit debt. So you have to make those right decisions. But if you don't give me the right information, I can never define that for you, because I don't know what your lifestyle encompasses.
All right. Looks like we may have a question. Give me just a moment here. Good evening. This is Black Men Speak. Tommy Duncan, your co-host. If you could give us your name. where you're from, and what your question is.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to know.
Caller, if you are there, we cannot hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Good evening, everyone. I just wanted to know what's going to happen to all the people that are purchasing.
You went dead. All the people that are you said all the people that are purchasing what? You went dead for a second. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, but I want to know what's going to happen to all the people that are purchasing these houses that are like 50% over ask, and like what's the benefit? And do they have to pay taxes on the actual cash value, or what the value is, or are they paying on what they purchased the home for? Like, how is this benefiting, or are they waiting for the market to adjust itself? Just curious. Thank you.
Did you get that question, gentlemen?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, that's a great question. And number one, broken record, you need to make sure you partner with the right people, because I'm sure Tirrell's not going to let that happen, because it may or may not qualify unless you bring in a whole lot of cash to the table. And I'm going to do my very best to make sure you're not drastically overpaying to begin with. If someone did overpay, you have to hope that they intend to be into the property for the long haul. So Brother Tirrell talked about interest rates. Right now, where we are today is still lower than the 20-year average. And so from a home appreciation standpoint, if you hold it long enough, real estate always appreciates. So if someone even overpaid and they're going to be, have the luxury to be in that property for 10 or 12 or 15 years of it, they're probably going to be fine regardless. The second part of your question in regards to taxes is, this may not answer exactly what we want, but it depends. Texas is a non-disclosure state, so your appraisal district doesn't necessarily know they do not know what you paid for the home. When the deed goes in and gets filed, and you can go look at any deed anyone has bought a home, typically in Texas, they'll say for $10 in consideration or something like that. It never says the price. So Texas is non-disclosure. So if you don't fall victim, and this happens all the time, we coach our clients not to do that. Got a letter today. You'll get things in the mail that look superficial, that if you're not being coached, you will volunteer what you paid, and then you will pay taxes on whatever you paid. So the appraised value with the district is separate and distinct from the market value. So if you overpaid, hopefully someone counsel you not to volunteer to your appraisal district what you paid. And again, hopefully you're being counseled by a good real estate team, and that you monitor your taxes annually and try to file your homesteads, file whatever other exemptions you're legally entitled to file, and protest annually where you can.
Yes. So, and that is something that I think is,
but that's kind of the best I can do with it, because it depends.
Yeah, that is underappreciated, and taking the time to fill out the paperwork. You can even do it online and protest on your taxes. Of course, making sure you do your homestead exemption. But again, the county is in the business of making as much money as they possibly can. So if they can get a few extra dollars out of you, they're gonna do it. And if you don't protest, but practically everybody that I've talked to, when they protest, they've gotten at least some benefit from it, more so than not doing it at all. What about your thoughts on that, Tirrell?
Well, there are times that people will overpay for a house, but it's overpay means the market price. So value of a house is what a reasonable person is willing to pay. So if you've been looking for a home for a while, and you're going to stay there, you're going to be there for a while, and you have to offer more money, 20, 30,000, and you have it to offer, and you can afford that payment, I don't consider overpaying. I consider that you're doing what's best for your family. Because over time, if you're going to not stay there 1, 2, 4 years, over time, we appreciate. So 15, 20 years from now, you might have paid 50,000 more, 30,000 more, but your house may be worth 200,000 more at that time. So if that's what you have to do to get yourself in the position you want to be at, and it's not going to affect your lifestyle and your ability to pay. Sometimes you have to do that in markets like this, and especially the markets we had 2 years ago. So,
yeah. So they say in the absence of value, price is the only thing that comes into play. So
correct.
You yourself have to define value.
That's right.
But just to reiterate, market value and appraised value are two different things. So do not volunteer. If your house is worth more,
explain the difference.
It's just market value is what a willing buyer, is willing to pay, what a willing seller is willing to take without either one being under any type of duress. So someone from California may come out here and they may see something up there in, Plano or Frisco or something, and they may be happy to pay $100,000 more because it's $300,000 less than what they paid in California. And to them, there's value. So the appraised value is what you're on the tax rolls for, and they can only increase that by about 10% a year if you have a homestead. So that number could be drastically different than what the market value is. But the gem that I'm trying to drop is be sure, because sometimes through lack of information, we are hurting ourselves because we're like, hey, I live in this neighborhood and my house is worth X, and you just filled out the paperwork and now you told them it was worth X, so now they're taxing you on X. That market value is important if you're selling, but the appraised value is the one that you should be concerned about as a homeowner.
Which determines your taxes.
Yes.
All right, we've got a couple of minutes left, so what we're going to do with these last few minutes is have you both provide your closing comments with another gem or two. We want to thank you. We've gotten some great feedback already from this show, and so we want to give you both an opportunity to provide any closing comments before we wrap this week's show up. We'll start with Mr. Tirrell and then Mr. Dwight.
Just my closing comments are this: is that I love what I do. I actually studied this in college, and when I graduated in '97, I went straight into this business. And my biggest thing that I want to do is help my people. So I love your questions. I want you to call me. You don't have to get a house from me, but I like to answer your questions and help put you on that path of home ownership and make sure that you understand what you're getting into and make sure that it's a dream and not a nightmare for you.
Amen. All right, Dwight, what say you?
Yeah, and I forgot to give kudos at the top. I love the prosecutor and defender arguments you made at the top of the show. That was an interesting to hear. But much like Brother Tirrell said, love coming from contribution, love mentoring folks and helping people make informed decisions. And whether that be with me or not, we do take a lot of pride in helping people make good decisions and coming from contribution. Lastly, I would say, if you're looking to invest or even buy, Houston, relatively speaking, is still a great place to buy real estate. It's still affordable by probably one of the most affordable places, even in Texas.
Yes,
so there are some places if folks have discretionary income or if you're sitting on tons of equity that you want to invest, give us a call. We'd love to be in business with you.
Let me ask you about this and make this very brief as we're at the end of the show. We talk about cash, but a lot of times people don't really consider how they can leverage credit as it pertains to making these types of decisions.
Do you say leverage credit?
Credit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you have credit, good credit and good equity, I mean, credit's probably a better Tirrell question, but if you have credit and you have equity, let's use other people's money. Like it's always better to use somebody else's money than your own, if you're making a good decision.
There you go. What say you, Tirrell?
Same thing. It's if you have good credit, there's more opportunities out there for you. There's more buying power. You are going to get a lower interest rate. You're just going to have just better opportunities. And one thing that I do with my clients is you may come to me, and we pull your credit report, and I see that you have let's call it a 690 credit score. Mm-hmm. I have an app that I run on all my clients. They say, hey, if you pay this credit card down $700, your 690 goes to 730, and it'll save you an interest rate. So I always give them an opportunity to see what they can do to increase their credit before they even buy. And this is, I can, sometimes it can be done in one day. It's not that it's, that you can't increase your credit, instantly. It's called rapid rescore. We can rapidly rescore if you do some of the things that my technologies tell me that you need to do.
Gotcha. So we've already got one topic to discuss for the next time that you're here. Ms. Book, we want you to talk about reverse mortgages.
Give me a call. I have a lot of experience with reverse mortgages. I think my phone number's down there. If you want to talk about it before we come back in about 3 months, just give me a call.
Okay, good deal. And then also Miss Elisa in Austin says, please come save me. Austin's so dang expensive. I get it, but unfortunately, as both of these gentlemen are telling you, probably not going to go down. Find the right place for you. If you're going to be there long term, find the right place for you, because, you know, I remember my father talking about what he paid for his house 20, 30 years ago. It hasn't gone down.
Yeah. Austin's the most expensive.
Come see me in Houston. Come here. We'll welcome you in Houston with open arms.
Yeah.
All right. We want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We thank you, Brother Johnson, Mr. Richard, for, of course, always providing your expertise. And folks, these are the professionals. They are committed to it. They've been doing this for a long time, consummate professionals. So make sure that you get the right partner when you're trying to make these decisions. Otherwise, folks, we want to thank you for joining us this evening on Black Men Speak, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.
Thanks, everybody.